Hi, this is Mark Trexler with YourExternalBrains.com with our weekly COVID-19 external brain foresight report. Now, as you can see in the graphic here, our sort of positioning along the probability curve hasn't changed from last time. There are things going on, but nothing has fundamentally changed in the last couple of weeks. But we have found some really interesting new resources that I'm going to show you and give you a quick look at sort of the Foresight module. Now, in terms of the issues of sort of overall scientific consensus, nothing really new to share there. In terms of the coordinated U.S. strategy, obviously there is no coordinated U.S. strategy. That's a thing of the past. And so we're not going to focus on that. I am going to zero in a bit on the how are things going across the U.S. because that's a critical question, obviously, and it's still a little early to tell what's going on, but it's not all great news. So, as you know, what we've done is we've created a lot of these different search terms, and so before making this video, I've gone through and reviewed sort of the 100 different preset searches that are in this external brain and pulled in some relevant new resources, some relevant articles, that some of which you see here. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the preset search terms. They're all there to really make it easy to explore all the different facets of what's going on with COVID-19. And you can do that yourself through this external brain if you go to YourExternalBrains.com, and you can download it and do exactly what I'm doing with all of this information very quickly and very easily. So first, let's jump just for a second to the latest U.S. map and case count from the New York Times. As you can see, the picture here is sort of a leveling off, although if you look at the underlying daily numbers, there has been an increase in the last few days that doesn't show up in the 7-day rolling average curve yet. So we're at 105, almost 105,000 deaths. We probably are by now. And you can go down quite a bit going on. What's a little alarming here is that there are a whole series of states where COVID-19 is increasing. There are happily a number of states where it's staying the same, but there are a lot of those as well. And then there are some that are continuing to decrease, including New York. But the overall U.S. picture, as we're in the middle of reopening, is not exactly the picture that you would like to see in terms of all of the different states going down. So that's an interesting thing. Now, one of the things that we just found is this resource from Information is Beautiful. It is probably the single best dashboard that we have found. And I'm just going to run you through it very quickly. So in this dashboard, you can see sort of what's going on with daily outbreaks. You can look at the infection and fatality rates by country. It's interesting to note that the U.S. has, as we all know, does have a lot more cases and a lot more deaths than any other country. It's sort of in the middle in terms of the death rate at about close to 6%. Unfortunately, the U.S. is at the top of the list. We're number one in terms of cases per million, and in terms of deaths per million, we're down the list a little bit. There are still plenty of countries where coronavirus is rising rapidly, and it is continuing to decline in some. Interesting to note, and I thought this was really interesting, that only 1% of deaths had no preconditions whatsoever in terms of cardiovascular, diabetes, respiratory, high blood pressure, cancer. So only 1% of deaths had no preconditions at all. 50% of deaths had 3 preconditions or more, which really tells you a lot about where the most vulnerable parts of the population are, as does this curve in terms of percentages by age, with in this case 80 to 89. So a lot of really interesting information right here, including how different masks rank in terms of their effectiveness. All of this on one slide or on one link that you can take a look at. Now, one thing you didn't see there was the issue of race and racial distribution. There is, however, a new racial data tracker out that we'll be using. And so this just, for example, notes that 13% of the US population, in terms of African Americans, 25% of the deaths where race is known. And the data isn't great there, but so a lot going on in the U.S. and very heterogeneous across the U.S. But we are just now getting into the period where, with the reopening, you would tend to start to see, in terms of the incubation period, you would tend to start to see people showing up sick. So the next week or two are going to be really critical to understand what's going on and what the implications are of the U.S. reopening, so to speak. So I did run through all of the other categories. There's we're starting to see some data on what the economic damage looks like for the rest of the year, which is severe. Not a lot of new surprises and unknowns right now. COVID testing, interestingly, we have finally managed to break the 400,000 test mark, where we've sort of been up and around the 400,000 test mark for about a week now. So that's where it's continuing to inch up. Still seems like quite a ways away from the 500 to 900,000 tests a day that a lot of experts are saying we need, but at least we're moving in the right direction. There has been quite a bit of discussion, but not a lot of great results in terms of sort of the issues of accuracy of testing. We're hearing a lot more about contact tracing, although the numbers are still so high in the US in terms of infections. It's hard to see how contact tracing really works. And the politicization of this is going to make contact tracing even more difficult. There is some new data coming out suggesting that the antibodies do confer immunity for a reasonable period of time, at least. That is good news. So that is a piece of good news for this week. More and more concern over the issues of skepticism, conspiracies. There is, as the New York Times talks about, get ready for a vaccine information war. We're already in the midst, we're getting ready for a vaccine information war months and months and months before a vaccine even exists, which is quite remarkable if you think about it. Not anything truly new in terms of treatments, in terms of vaccine in the last week or so. Lots of things going into trial, lots of things being tried, but nothing really becoming clear in terms of what the right direction is going to be. Issues of herd immunity continue to be debated around the world. Quite different numbers being thrown around as to what fraction of different populations have been exposed, although I haven't seen any numbers suggesting that large fractions of populations in Spain or in Sweden have been exposed. The whole question of Sweden continues to be a large one. They have a lot more deaths per million than some of their neighbors. But Sweden actually had economic growth during the last quarter, whereas pretty much every other country had an economic collapse during the last quarter. So still some discussion of what's going on in Sweden. We put it all together here as usual. As again, that sort of the net place didn't change, but hasn't been a good place on that probability distribution now for several weeks, and we'll have to see what happens for next week. So again, all of this is available to you in our COVID-19 External Brain at yourexternalbrains.com. You can explore it, you can play with it, you can even download it through our Patreon project and have sort of instant access to everything I'm showing you, and actually a lot more. Thank you.